Welcome. I'm Karen O'Connor, and I want to talk to you today about guests. Having guests on a podcast. Here's the big question, because it might be really attractive to have guests. It might be great because you don't have to just talk yourself all the time. But there's a whole thing about setting up for guests and the pressure of doing it right for guests. So first of all, decide whether you want guests or not. And then you've got to think about how are you going to set this up? Do you use Zoom? Do you use, because it's free, right? Do you use a paid platform such as Riverside? And the reason you'd use Riverside or somebody like that is because the audio quality is so much better than it is on Zoom. If you are just starting out on your podcast, I highly recommend that you use Zoom. Just make sure everybody uses a microphone and headphones, if at all possible, even just the ones that you put in your ear, your AirPods or your iPhone headphones, because it helps stop that feedback and echo. Make sure when you're using guests that when you're on Zoom, you click out the noise cancellation thing, the background noise cancellation. Just make sure that's on so that you get your sound as good quality as possible. So you've decided to have guests. Now, the next thing is, how do you find guests? And it's always a big problem. When I started off, I started interviewing my friends. And it was one of the main reasons that I started the podcast was because I found myself surrounded by all of these women with the most incredibly inspirational and heart-wrenching stories to share. And I just wanted to get those out in the world because nobody was hearing them. And it's important to share that kind of thing. And that was why I started. So I started off interviewing my friends, which makes it nice and easy because you can just say, you have a chat about when you're going to have a conversation, and then you say, okay, you tee up a time together, you send them the Zoom link and off you go. That's literally all you do. But if you don't know the person, you've got to do something a little bit more than that. So if you're going to have guests, and I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, I'll go back to how to find guests in a minute. So if you're going to have guests, you have to set yourself up properly. It's worth setting up something on a platform like Calendly so that you can schedule times in. It will link with your calendar and you can see when you're free or not. Or you just set days when you're free, see between 9 and 4 on these days, and just get it to send you emails and things. Set it up so it will send them the Zoom link and they can click on that and join. So once you got all that set up, the next thing you do is to find your guests. There's a few places. There are a couple of Facebook groups that I know about. One of them is podcast collaborations, free to join. You just click on the group thing and ask to join, and the management will let you in. And you can put a call out there for people who would like to come on your podcast to talk about whatever topic you're interested in. And if you want to appear on somebody else's podcast, same deal. You can put a post in there and say, I'm an expert in this. I want to come on somebody's podcast to talk about this topic. Is anybody interested? Possibly that's the first step I'd go to. So be friends and then put a call out on Facebook, on your own page as well as in the groups. The third place, when you feel a bit more established and a little bit more confident in yourself, there is a website called Source Bottle, SOURCE bottle, BOTTLE.com. And they're Australian based, but they reach out across most of the world. And it was established for journalists to put calls out for experts that they needed to provide quotes or interviews for newspaper articles. As a blogger podcaster, you can put a call out on there too. And that's where I get a lot of my guests for my podcast from. I'd say I'm interested in talking to people who are specialists in pelvic floor health, and then put the call out, and then people contact me through Source Bottle and I send them the link to go on Calendly if it sounds good. Usually people will send you a little bit of information about themselves and you can go, yeah, no, that's a fit, that's not a fit. You might want to have a chat with them before you actually record anything, before you confirm a confirmation. And that's the best way. That has been a game changer for me in terms of finding guests, because it's expanded my reach massively. And it also means PR companies look on places like Source Bottle for their clients. So it means that I'm now on the database of PR companies, and I actually get people reaching out to me to come onto my podcast. I put calls out when I want to do a little series on something, but there's usually people there that are interested in coming on the podcast. So I don't have to put out many call outs anymore. It's a really great way of doing things. Just make sure that if you're going to do that and you're going to go down that route where you look professional, where you want to be more professional, make sure that you are set up to be professional. Give your guests a really fabulous journey from start to finish. So make it easy for them to sign up here, go find a time here, set up Calendly or something, and then set up Calendly so it sends out all the emails to them automatically, all the reminders, all of those kind of things. Make sure that your guest has the information that they need. Are you going to use the video? Are you not? Explain to them not to have a window in the background, that they should be in a quiet room. Make sure there's going to be no disturbances. Switch their computer on silent, all of those things. Even ideas on what to wear and not what to wear. You don't want somebody who's wearing a lot of heavy bangles and is sitting at a desk, because there's going to be a lot of background noise with that. So just do a little list, a little sheet that says, these are the recommendations. Have a think about this, think about the lighting, all of that kind of thing, so that you can minimize any nerves on their behalf, right? And then the next thing to do is to make sure that you communicate clearly with them about when their episode is going to come out. Send them the links to the episode. And then if you're promoting it on social media, make sure that you tag them. Get all their social media handles and tag them in the different posts on Instagram and Facebook and wherever else you post, and allow them to share with their audience too, because it's a great way of growing your own audience, right? Then there's a big question: to interview or not to interview, which sounds a bit weird because you've got a guest, right? And you've got a topic to discuss. Do you interview them or do you have a conversation? Personally, my podcasting style is conversational. I do not like to do interviews, and I don't send people a list of questions that I'm going to ask them during the conversation. And I do get asked this fairly regularly. I say, look, this is the topic we're going to cover from this context, and I'll probably ask you X, Y, Z, A, B, C, but I can't promise that, because my style is that I want people to feel like they're listening to two friends chatting over coffee. So I don't know where it's going to go. And that's the way I do it. Some people do have a list of questions, and it can work for you. I think my way is, in one way, a lazy way, because I do my research on guests, don't get me wrong. I do go and check out their websites, and I check out their social medias, and I do a bit of background research, because I want to know what it is about them that I find the most interesting, so that I can bring that out during the interview. But to do a list of questions for me would just seem very stilted for my style. You might want to do that. You might want to write out a list of questions, even just as prompts, so that if there's a little bit of gap in the conversation, you can just say, oh, hang on, just let me, there was something else I needed to ask you. Let me just go down here. And you can go to your questions. So you might have that as prompts, or you might write out a list of the questions that you're going to ask. If you're going to do that, I suggest sending that to the guest prior to talking to them for the podcast, so that they're aware of what you're going to be asking and they can prepare as well. The final question to ask is, how long should the podcast episode be when you've got a guest? Look, my gut feeling, I try to keep it between 40 and 50 minutes long. My podcasts are usually about 45 minutes long when I've got a guest. I find that's the sweet spot for me. I do know of people who will go for a couple of hours when they're talking to guests and having a conversation. I try to keep my episodes, if it's just me talking, 15 to 20 minutes. If I've got a guest on, 40 to 50 minutes. Now, there have been several guests where I've got so in deep in the conversation that the conversation has gone on way longer than that, and it's pure gold. So what I've done is I've just split the episode into two. I've had part 1 and part 2, and that saves me from having to cut a lot of really valuable information out, and it still allows the conversation to flow. So that's the other thing you can do, is to decide how long it's going to be. I'd say between 30 and 50 minutes. 30 minutes is a little bit short if you've got a guest, but it depends on what they're talking about. And if it goes for a long time, just cut it in two. You can do that. And just let the guests know that you're doing that, because they'll probably be very grateful that they provided so much valuable information that you don't want to edit it out. So that's it with regards to guests. I hope you found something valuable with this. Please don't forget to subscribe and like, and head on over to social media and follow us on there. And don't forget to go and check out the Speak Up Podcasting website, because if you've got a podcast or you're thinking of starting a podcast, we've got all the tools you need to get you started straight away. So head on over there, and I'll see you next time.